Hi, my name is Bella McMinn, and I'm the social media manager here at The Rock Church. I'm so glad you've connected with us today and wanted to welcome you to our online service. In addition to our weekly service, you can engage with us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I would love to hear from you on social media or by email. You can email me at bella@therocknv.church. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the service.
Our strength is renewed in your presence as we wait on you. Our joy is restored in your presence as we worship you. Our faith cannot be shaken. Nothing can separate us. Lord is with us. Lord is with us. Our God is for us. He will never fail. Lord is with us. Our God is for us. He will never fail. No, no, never fail. He will never fail. Never fail. No, no. Our hope is revived in your presence as we sing to you. Your word comes alive in your presence as we trust in you. Our faith cannot be shaken. Nothing can separate us. Yes, He is. Yes, He is. He will never fail. Oh, yes, He is. He will never fail. No, no, never fail. prisons that we couldn't escape. But he came and he died and he rose. Those walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave? They were like mountains that stood in our way. But he came and he died and he rose. Those giants are dead now. But this is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Hey. Remember that fear that took our breath away. Our faith so weak that we could barely pray. But he heard every word, every whisper. And now those altars in the wilderness, they tell the story of his faithfulness. Never once did he fail, and he never will. 'Cause this is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but him. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Yeah. This is our God. Oh. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, welcome. We are going to continue right along with worship, but one thing that I wanted to point out, one of the things that happens is when I'm selecting the music, I don't really think about this, but then when we're going through it, there's like a theme a lot of times. I'm sure it's God creating the theme, but in this week's music, I just see it over and over again, this idea of God being our provider. He never lets us down. He never fails us. He's always there for us. And that's what this next song is also about. The lyrics might sound a little strange. It says, there's honey in the rock, but it comes from this verse in Psalms. And it says that God is our provider and he will provide honey in the rock. In other words, no matter what kind of a situation we're in the tough spots, he's always going to come through.
There's honey in the rock, water in the stone, manna on the ground, no matter where I go. I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you've got. There's honey in the rock.
wanna know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I wanna know you, Lord. I wanna know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I wanna know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion, and I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion, and I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I wanna know you, Lord. I wanna know you, Lord. Yeah. I wanna know you, Lord.
Well, I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. Well, I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord.
So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion, and I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I wanna know you, Lord. My desire is to know you, Lord. Wanna know you, Lord.
Lord, I've been told to be ashamed. Lord, I've been told I don't measure up. Lord, I've been told I'm not good enough. But you're here with me.
You're here with me, and I reach out and you find me in the dust.
My Jesus,
This ain't no amount All right, we rejoiced in our God this morning. Hey, before you take a seat, would you find someone around you and just say, Good Rock morning?
Good morning, everyone. How you doing? Good. My name's Lindsay, and I'm so glad to be with you today. If you are new to The Rock, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. So be sure after the service is over to check out our new Here table at the lobby so that we can say hi and get to know you a little bit better. All right, now if you've been in the church for a while like I have, you know one of those awkward topics that churches like to talk about is giving. And so here at The Rock, we try to make it super easy. We believe that giving is a personal matter of the heart and a reflection of God's generosity to us, so we don't pass an offering plate. We do offer many ways that you can give whenever you're ready. We've got a giving kiosk out in the lobby and offering boxes also. And you can also give online at therockinv.church. So it's August already, in case you've missed that. It came very quick. But at The Rock, we really value our younger generation, and they're an amazing part of our church, and they're an amazing part of our future church too, right? And they're about to be starting school. So we've got some cool things coming up that we wanted to share with you. So for our Rock kids and students, they will be preparing to head back and start a new school year. So next Sunday is Pop-Up Sunday, which means we're going to be having some fun, we're going to celebrate, and we're just going to have a good time talking about these kiddos starting a new year and praying for them and wishing them the best as they start this year. So be sure to come next Sunday with your kiddos. We'll have photo booth, goodie bags, and ice cream. And make sure you just stick around and have some fun after the service with us. Now, for those in 6th through 12th grade, we're kicking off the school year with another Nerf war. We had one at the beginning of summer, which was a blast. This one it's one of the most requested events. So be sure to be here this coming Friday, August 11th at 6 p.m. If you have a Nerf gun, bring it. If you don't, I assure you we have plenty. So just make sure to come. It'll be a lot of fun. I think there'll be pizza too. You can RSVP online, and just a great time for the kiddos before they start school. And last but not least, our younger generation, the Rock Z, which is our 18 to 30-year-olds. We have a couple of fun events coming up, starting with lunch after church next week. They'll be meeting at Blind Onion around 11:45. The church is going to provide the pizza, so just bring a few dollars so that you can get drinks or anything else that you'd like. And again, RSVP online so we know how many to expect, so there will be plenty of pizza. Okay, now I had mentioned it's August, so this is your second reminder that it's August already, and it wouldn't be August here at The Rock without our annual baptism and barbecue. So last year we joined with our friends at Hands of Grace for a joint service and baptism celebration, and we're excited to do the same this year. So if you're interested in being baptized, or if you have any questions about what that means, you can sign up online or at our welcome counter. So this is a celebration for the whole family, so be sure to bring everybody. We won't just have a barbecue, we'll have games, and my son's very favorite, the Kona Shave Ice Truck, will be here for everybody for some tasty treats on a hot day. And even if you're not getting baptized, please let us know online if you're coming so we can make sure to have enough food for everybody. So like I said, the easiest way to register for any and all of these events is to go to therockinv.church and let us know you're coming. All right, got it, everybody? That was a lot, but we're excited to start this new school year with all the fun things. So, all right, we are continuing our summer series, Follow Through, and today we have a special guest speaker. Ron Toft is here with us. He's shared with us a few times over the past year, and today he's here to talk to us about mental health. Now, Ron is currently finishing up his master's degree program at Oregon State University for clinical mental health counseling and is doing his internship at Quest Counseling in Reno. He does substance abuse and mental health counseling and is beginning to specialize in trauma care and out-of-the-office therapy that makes mental health care services more accessible. So we're excited to have him. And before we start, let me just pray for us, all right? God, thank you for this day. Thank you for these people that are here. Thank you for Ron and his willingness to come and speak to us. I just pray that you will bless his words and that we will take them to heart, hear them, and apply them to our lives. God, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your love. Amen.
All right, thank you, Lindsay.
You're
Good morning, Rock Church. How's everyone doing today? Enjoying summer, the end of it, getting ready for school? How am I going to arrange all this? I'm just going to leave it like that. For those of you who don't know, I am from Kindred Church, which is a small startup church here in Reno. We're about a year and a half old almost. That's a little surprising. It goes quickly. Down in South Reno, and The Rock has been a very generous partner of ours. We simply wouldn't exist without your financial support, without your relational support. And so I always, when I come, I just like to say thank you to The Rock Church, and thank you for having me, but also thank you just for the relationship we have with you. I mean, we simply wouldn't exist. And we're actually, I believe, the only non-denominational affirming church in Reno city limits. So I think it's very important that we exist. And that is largely thanks to this church. So as something of an ambassador from that church coming, I just want to, again, express our real gratitude. We love you guys so much, and we're really glad that we have you as a partner in all of this endeavor of being a Christian in today's world and in the Reno Sparks area. So thank you, first of all. And we've been going through this series called Follow Through, looking at the different dimensions of health, which I think is really cool. And, you know, I watch the videos, right, when I'm preparing to come talk, kind of see how the series is going, see what people have said in the past, make sure I'm not repeating anything, and that I'm in line with the series. And multiple times I heard somebody say at the beginning of the sermon, like, man, this topic, how do you do it in 1 week, you know? And that's exactly how I feel about mental health. You know, 30 minutes or something, whatever, and on mental health, I could talk about this for a long time. And I was like, man, where do I even start with this? And as I was kind of first just thinking of the ideas that I wanted to talk about, I kind of landed on two pillars that in my experience are really important to people's mental health in our modern age. And the first one was emotional honesty, or just the importance of being emotionally vulnerable, being able to communicate your feelings well, especially to the people that are safe in your life, like your family and friends and so forth. And, you know, I could talk about that for a long time, because it's something that I, in my own practice, even, you know, as young as it is, as I'm still in my training, I've just run against that so many times that, like, you know, it's like when you're watching like a reality show or even like a movie or something, and like one of the characters is telling his friend how he feels, you know, or her friend how she feels, and you're like, just tell the other person that, you know, and all the drama of the movie would be fine if you would just talk to each other. That's pretty much my job. That's what I do during the day. I'm like, just have you told them that? Have you told them how you feel? You're telling a stranger. Just go tell them how you feel. It's so important for our relationships to have that emotional honesty and vulnerability, and being able to tell people how you feel and being vulnerable with them. And then, of course, the opposite side of that is reciprocating with empathy, and that's how problems get solved in most of our relationships. But I'm not going to talk about that. Because I watched the video of it was Brett and Andy talking about emotional health a couple weeks ago, and they did a great job. So I was like, good, I can cut that one out. I don't have to worry about that one now. And so I landed on, I'm just going to talk about that second pillar then, and spend some time on this. And that second pillar for our mental health in our modern age is rest. And I think that rest is a key for our mental health. And I'm going to actually reframe that a little bit. Mental health really is relational health, in my opinion. The more that I've learned about mental health, the more that I've seen studies and read scholarly journals and so on and so forth. And you know, Lindsay mentioned I'm in my graduate program, so I'm doing a lot of that right now. It's all about relationship. It's just about having good relationships. If you have good, supportive relationships in your life, you can weather just about anything. The people that don't have that have to turn to their kind of internal safety measures that our bodies are built with, that God designed us with, and that's where some problems can occur. And so really mental health, I think, is good relational health as well. So I'm also going to be kind of talking about it in that dynamic, that in that system in our life, the part of our life is mental health is also good relationship health. And I think that rest is an important part of good relationships, of building good relationships and having good mental health. But when I say rest, I don't just mean, taking it easy. What I don't mean by rest is, I don't mean leisure, which literally means free time. And I don't mean entertainment, which is, I kind of looked up these words. It's more like a diversion. Entertaining means being diverted, having a diversion that you look over here instead of over here. That's where the word comes from. I'm not talking about that. And I mention it because I think in our modern world, that's what rest is most of the time. In our technological age, you get home from a busy day or you're exhausted after a hard week, and what do? We sit on the couch and turn on Netflix or whatever, right? We look at our phone, immediately start scrolling on our phones. That is leisure, that is entertainment. There's a fantastic book, well, I shouldn't say that. There's a fantastic author that I really like right now. His name is Andy Crouch, and I even mentioned him last time I spoke here, I believe, or the time before that. I really like what he has to say about technology right now. It's kind of his area of specialty is spirituality and technology and the intersection of those things. And he has a book that I have not read yet, but I've heard great things and is definitely on my list to get, called The Life That We Wanted. And he talks about how technology has turned rest into leisure, into just being entertained. And work has become not so much creating something that we care about, but toil, simply producing. And we get into this cycle of toil and leisure. And we never actually really truly rest. And by rest, what I really mean is restoration, being restored, being renewed. And I looked up that word too. It comes from the word that means like to restock, kind of like a store restocks its shelves, except it's about health. It's about renewing something that was lost in our health. It actually comes from the word for cure. That when you get sick and you get a cure, your health is renewed or restocked or restored. So restorative rest is about being renewed, being restored for more. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about rest. Not just sitting on the couch and resting. And I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, and it's an important part of our world. And Lord knows I sit on the couch and watch TV when I'm tired. What I'm talking about is building into our life a cycle of restorative and renewing rest. Now, I know we've been basing this the series on the book of James. And so I read through James. I'm like, does he talk about rest? I better figure this out. And I found something that actually really fit with what I was thinking. It didn't seem like it at first. But Andy, it's interesting that you talked about a theme of provision for this week, because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. That's what I think true rest is based on. And so I found in James, and we're going to be in James 1, verse 16, he says, "Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of creation, of his creatures, Every good and every perfect gift comes from above." And it's that provision that we're going to be talking about a little bit and getting rest out of that. Now, we're not 100% sure who wrote the book of James. Most likely, almost certainly, it was a guy named James, first of all. Probably it was the James who was Jesus' brother, which is pretty cool. But we could be pretty much 100% sure that James was a Jewish male who grew up in a Jewish family and a Jewish community, living and learning and organizing himself in the same way that Jewish culture has been doing for 1,000 generations. And so, recognizing that, I can be pretty certain that when James is talking about every good and perfect gift coming from the Father of lights, coming from God, I can be pretty sure that he's writing out of this context, this rhythm, this understanding of the Sabbath. And now the Sabbath is such an interesting topic. For the last couple of years, I've been looking at it. I've been kind of more interested in it. And then even for this talk, as I was preparing for it, I got more and more into it. And I was like, man, this is a huge topic. It's so cool. It is beautiful. It is amazing. It is powerful, even. And I could probably talk about the Sabbath for a really long time. But I'm just going to scratch the surface of the Sabbath. The Sabbath, I think, for us Gentile Christians, is kind of like a thing in the Bible that is there and seems good, and we kind of squeeze it into our belief system and the way that we do religion and so forth. But it's like, it's the Sabbath, we go to church. That's what the Sabbath kind of is for us, right? And maybe we take it easy on Sunday. And that's kind of what we know of the Sabbath. I think for most kind of lay Christians, that's what the Sabbath is. But really, the Sabbath is deep. It is crazy how big it is. I never really realized how important it is in the Bible, actually. And, it really, well, okay. So here's the thing. I had a whole plan for this sermon, right? And I had all my ideas planned out. I was finishing up yesterday in my little home office. I took the morning off to just really meditate on this, polish it, put it all on paper. And I got about halfway, and then I had this kind of new revelation. And it just blew up the whole second half of the sermon. So I decided I have to go with that. It's good. And I hope that this new thing is what is needed to be heard more than the thing that I had thought of first. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to do my best to stay linear and to stay within the time. So forgive me if I occasionally kind of stop and I'm going to be listening or thinking a little bit. But I'm just going to speak from the heart and from the mind, if that's okay. And we're going to start with the Sabbath. And I know you're like, what does the Sabbath have to do with mental health? Bear with me, I'm going to get there. The Sabbath is huge. It really seems to be a pillar of the biblical story. Certainly a theme that runs all the way throughout. And now, the more I learn about it, and even I have now really gotten into it, but the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, could the Bible even really exist without the Sabbath? It's huge. And it's so important to us, and it's something that I am trying to put more into my life. So let's read a little bit about it. Let's learn a little bit about the Sabbath, and then we're going to look at how it can translate into our life as real, true, restorative rest and provision. Because that's really what it's about, maybe more than anything. Sabbath starts at the very beginning of the Bible, Genesis 1. And it goes really all the way throughout. Certainly it's echoed here in James, which is pretty close to the end. I haven't looked beyond that yet, but I'm sure it's probably in there, even past James. But in Genesis 1, what do we have? The creation story, right? God creating the universe, ordering the universe. And it is done in a very specific manner. I'm not going to read it, but I'm just going to kind of look at it for myself, because there's a very specific formula or pattern that the creation story follows, right? And you may be familiar with this. It goes like this. And God said, he creates something for that day by speaking into existence. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. And God said, and God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. And God said, and saw that it was good. And it was morning, it was evening and it was morning the third day. The pattern repeats. God creates, God saw it was good, evening and morning, that's the day. And then we get to the last day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. So we have a pattern now. Day, work, creation for God, saw that it was good, day's over, next day, work, saw it was good, next day. And then the seventh day happens, and we don't have that pattern. We have a new pattern of God resting. And there the pattern ends. But I think there's a very interesting thing that happens in the seventh day that I never really quite realized before, which was not just that God rested, as in ceased from working. By the way, Sabbath comes from the word Shabbat, which literally means to cease. And there's another word for rest later that's tied with Sabbath that means more of like a settling, or what we're going to talk about, that restorative health. But here God ceases his work, he Shabbats, and rests in all that he's done. And it says that he makes it holy. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Now, in the Bible, what makes something holy? It's God's presence. When God is present in the world, that thing or that people or that place or whatever becomes holy. And holy literally means set apart. And I'm starting to realize more and more as I read the Bible that holy is really like a remnant of God's good and perfect creation, Eden, in our imperfect and broken and sinful world. So that when God comes down to a place or a thing, right, they had the Holy of the Holies in the tabernacle. That was literally God's presence, and you couldn't even enter. That was a piece of Eden, a piece of God's perfect creation in our world, a little remnant of it. And indeed, God comes down to Mount Sinai and a few other times, and those things are holy, and humans can't even really enter in, except for some small exceptions that God allows without dying. God's presence makes something holy. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it, God rested from all his work that he'd done in creation. I think that on the seventh day, God didn't just rest as in stop from his work. I think that God came down to his creation. The whole creation story, God's like up above it. He's creating it and all these things. He's looking at it. He's evaluating it. On the seventh day, I think God came down to his creation. And indeed, the idea of divine rest and the language of it in the cultures that surrounded Moses and the first books of the Bible, divine rest was associated with the temple, with the God's temple. And so I'm starting to see now that actually creation might be more of God's temple. I think I've always put myself in the center of creation, that God created all this amazing stuff for me to enjoy, for his people to enjoy. I think actually God was creating his temple, his home, his dwelling place. And on the seventh day, it became holy because God came down to enjoy his work, to come and live in this amazing, beautiful house that he created. And he created humankind in their image. I say they because God's plural is referenced in the plural in this point of the story. God created humans in their image, not just because we're so great and God had created this amazing home for us, but to be priests in his temple, to take care of his creation. That's what the Bible says that he created us for. Go take care of this thing that I've made, of this house that I have made for myself. That's our job, is to care for creation. At least in the creation story, and I would say that continues today. And so on the seventh day, he completed a cycle of work and then came by coming to dwell in it and to enjoy his creation. And there's some interesting, observations about the seventh day here that, it doesn't end. There's not an evening and morning and the seventh day, and so that maybe this idea that the Sabbath continues or the seventh day continues, which is an interesting thought. But for us humans, what actually is created in this creation story is a cycle that repeats itself, right? 6 days of work and then a holy day of rest in which we get to enjoy our work, or really enjoy God's work, as we're going to see. So a cycle is born for us, and we see this very quickly in the beginning of the story of God's people, of the Israelites, that he commands them to live in this cycle. It is commanded by God shortly after he consecrates this people, the Israelites, to be his. He commands them, keep my Sabbath because it is holy. It is now a commandment to have a cycle of 6 days of work and 1 day where you don't work, a seventh day where you rest and don't do anything, of at least nothing productive. Enjoy your work and enjoy this world that I've given you, he tells his people. Most strongly, he says this in, we're going to look at this. This is pretty intense. I didn't realize how intense God was about the Sabbath, to be honest. We're going to look at, let's not pull it up just yet. Sorry. Let me give a little context for it. The Israelites just left Israel. They're going to be, they're slaves. They got freed. They're wandering through the wilderness. They come to Mount Sinai. God comes down on Mount Sinai, calls Moses up there, and he just gives Moses a ton of information. I mean, he downloads laws and prescriptions, and he gives them detailed instructions on how to build a tabernacle and how the priesthood should be organized. I mean, it's like 10 chapters of dense information that God is just throwing at Moses on the mountaintop. And he finishes it all up with this last commandment. This is Exodus 31, verse 12. And the Lord said to Moses, you are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths. This is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you, make you holy, dwell with you. You shall keep the Sabbath because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath shall be put to death. Therefore, the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a covenant forever. It is a sign forever between me and the people of Israel that in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Man, that is intense, right? The penalty for breaking the Sabbath, for working on that every seventh day, was death and exile from your people. It's serious. But what God is commanding, and why I think this is so important to him, and we kind of get a clue of it here, this is a sign that, similar to like circumcision, for example, that the Israelites are his people and he is their God. Because it's hard to have the Sabbath. It's hard to keep the Sabbath. Especially if it's hard enough for us in our modern world where food and water and shelter are, we got that pretty much situated now. Even for us, it's hard to take a whole day off and to do nothing, or at least to do any productive work. And it must have been even harder for people who their entire economy was based on subsistence farming. To take a whole day, not just tend your animals or your crops, that's crazy. They were fighting just to have enough food for their family to survive. So for God to tell them to take a whole day off every seventh day, that's pretty intense. But it is a sign that they are separated from the rest of the world. The seventh day is a day of holiness, of separation, of God's goodness in the world. A reminder of that. And so we see God establishing a cycle for them, the same cycle that he operated in creation. He said, work for 6 days, take a day off for the Sabbath. That's your seventh day, and then the cycle repeats. And I think that God creates in cycles, actually. Creation is an interconnected web of cycles, right? We all learn about the water cycle in school. Water gets evaporated, goes in the clouds, comes down as precipitation, gets gathered into body waters, gets evaporated again, and the cycle continues. Earth also goes through a cycle. It goes down into the earth and gets reborn out, back up into the earth. The heavenly bodies operate in cycles around each other, moving in orbits and so forth. A physicist would tell us that energy and matter itself recycles itself. No energy and matter is ever made or destroyed. It simply changes form and recycles. I think that creation, God's temple that he built, is a web of cycles, and he tells his people, for your best, live in this cycle. Have a cycle of work and rest. Don't just work and work and work. Have a cycle of work and then a day of rest. And of course, we have another cycle of work and rest, which is day and night, right? We sleep at night. And if you've ever had to skip a few nights of sleep, it's painful not to live in that cycle, isn't it? We have to live in that cycle, whether we want to or not. Then God says there's actually a bigger cycle that I want you to live in, that I created. And then there's even a bigger cycle the more you go into Sabbath, of a Sabbath year. Every seventh year, he told his people, you can't work that whole year. Take the whole year off. And then even a Sabbath of Sabbath years. Every seventh Sabbath year was the year of Jubilee, which is so beautiful. So God had his people operating in these cycles so that they could have 6 days of work and then a day of rest and reflection and enjoying their work and remembering God's provision. And that is so important to us. It's something we don't always put into our daily life, but God said, forever do this, because it's a sign that I provide for you, and it's also good for you, my people who I love. Because the Sabbath, among other things, perhaps most importantly, is a reminder of God's provision, that God provides for us, that we don't have to provide for ourselves all the time. I mentioned that it must have been very difficult for the Israelites, at least in the Promised Land, or even in the Promised Land, when they were, an agricultural society, to not tend to their crops every sixth day, to not work their animals every seventh day, That must have been very difficult. And probably their neighboring nations were like, what's wrong with you guys? That was their holiness. They were set apart from the world. But it was even harder when they got this instruction, because they were not yet farmers. They were wandering in the wilderness, probably barely surviving as far as food is concerned. And God says, I'm leading you in this wilderness, so don't worry, I will provide for you. And he gives them quail and manna in the wilderness to feed them. make sure that they live and survive. And God has very specific rules about the Sabbath even in this times. He says, go out, gather the manna for a day, whatever you need, and enjoy it and eat it, but don't keep it. You're not allowed to keep it till the next day. If you do, it'll rot and stink. And it did. Some people disobeyed, and they relied on themselves, and they were like, we need to gather more, because I need that security. I can't just rely on what God says, because maybe God's lying, or who knows what. They gathered, and they kept it for the next day, and they woke up in the morning, and it had worms in it, and it stank, and they couldn't eat it. But fortunately, God did provide, and there was more manna on the ground for that day. But then God said, on the sixth day, go ahead and gather for 2 days. I will give enough manna on the ground for 2 days and keep it for the seventh day, and it will not go bad. Every other day, it's going to go bad if you try to gather for yourself. On the sixth day, go ahead and gather for 2 days, and it will not go bad. And so the people gather enough for 2 days. They keep it overnight. It had just stunk and had worms in it anytime they tried the last 6 days. But God said to do this, so all right, Moses said through God. And they kept it overnight, and they woke up on the seventh morning, and lo and behold, did not have worms, did not stink. It was good. And they came to Moses, and they're like, look, the manna is still good on the seventh day. And Moses in Exodus 16:29 says, see, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, on the sixth day, he gives you bread for 2 days. Remain, each of you, in your place. Let no one go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. God provided for the Sabbath. Here's the beauty, I think, of the Sabbath. And here, finally, I'm getting into mental health. The Sabbath is antithetical to the curse of sin, of our fall, of the original sin. Come back with me to the Garden of Eden in the beginning of the story. People were in the Garden of Eden. Humanity was in the garden, Adam and Eve. God provided free and abundant sufficiency for them. Life abundant, as Jesus later called it. They had everything they needed without having to toil for it. But they decided they couldn't just trust God for their provision. They wanted to do it for themselves. They wanted to trust themselves. They wanted the security of thinking, I have to do it for myself. I don't want to have to trust God. I want to be able to do it for myself. I want to be as good as God and provide for myself. And that was the fall. I think it's the one sin, actually, still today, trusting ourselves instead of trusting God. And what was the curse for that rejection of God and his provision? God said, you want to do it on your own? Fine. But the result is you are now going to have to do it on your own. You are going to have to scratch out of this earth now a survival and a living for yourself. I provided it abundantly and freely for you, and you rejected that, so now you're going to have to toil your whole life trying to get that back, trying to get that sufficiency again. You will work the land now until the day you die. It will never be good enough. You will die doing this, and you will return to the dust from which you were made. And that is our curse now that we have lived under ever since. That we have to work hard to survive just so that we can die at some point in time. But the Sabbath, once every seventh day, is a break for God's people from the curse. God says, even though you rejected me, even though you wanted to do it on your own, even though I gave you abundance and you said no, still I provide for those of you that trust in me. Still, once every seventh day, I will give you what you need, and you don't even have to work for it. Even though that was the result of your decision to do it on your own. The Sabbath is a break from the curse of our sin, from the result of our sin. God has provided us rest from toil and survival. See, church, God has provided you a rest. So take a break. Not just from your physical work, because food and basic survival skills, those are easy for the most part for us to come by. We've got that handled. But we still struggle to survive. Take a break from the anxiety of not being good enough. Take a break from the pressure of having to prove all the time that you are good enough to a world that only wants to press you down and take advantage of you. Take a break from the depressive thoughts that come from seeing nothing but a meaningless life of toil only until death. Because that's all that these two hands can do. But we, children of God, people of God who are set apart, have access to a source that is beyond the power of our two hands. We get to take a break. We get to take a break from the curse, and we get to know and be assured that God is providing for us so that we don't have to be anxious about what's coming next. We don't have to be worried about whether we're good enough. We don't have to feel the pressure of doing everything for ourselves. I'm going to call the band back up as I finish up. That is what rest is. God saying, even still, even in this world, even in your rejection and your selfishness and your greed, still, I am providing for you, so take a break. Find rest in me. Find provision in me. Everything that you're anxious about is in me, God is telling us. And I give it to you, at least sometimes in this world, apart from you having to earn it. We don't have to earn it anymore. That's what the Sabbath is. A reminder that we don't have to be good enough. We don't have to earn it anymore. We don't have to be anxious. And instead of having every day of our life until we die be a scratching out of the earth, a good enough living, we can take a break, we can take a Sabbath, we can Shabbat and cease, and instead spend time with people that we love. Have fun. Take a nap. Enjoy your family and your friends and whatever else you got going on in your life that is good and healthy and supportive. If you need it, take the time to find that if you don't have it. Because like I said, mental health really is relational health. Having good relationships in your life is what we should be doing on Shabbat, on Sabbath. Eating and drinking and resting and having fun with those that we love. And that will restore us and remind us that we are good enough, that God has provided for us, actually, even though we are not good enough. Because that's the harsh reality of this world that is pretty difficult to accept. Without God, it's almost impossible, I would say, to accept the reality that we are not good enough, and no matter how good we are, no matter how hard we try, someday we're going to die, and everything we did isn't worth it. Without God in the picture, that's the best we have. And that's going to create some mental health issues. But God reminds us, build into the cycle of your life on the regular. Remind yourself that you have access to something more than the power of your own hands, than the strength that you have that is insufficient. And know that I continue, even in this wilderness, to provide for you. And you don't have to earn it, because God is good. And God provides abundantly and freely, and we look forward to the day when we will come into that into fullness. And that is the promise of deliverance also in the Sabbath, and that we see in Jesus, that is fulfilled in Jesus. But I want to encourage you, church, if you want mental health, if you want better mental health in your family and in your life, build a cycle in your days in which you remind yourself, I don't have to struggle today. I don't have to be worried today. I don't have to try and figure it all out today. Today I can rest and know that God is good and that people love me and that I have other people around me that I love. And have fun, rest, be refreshed in that day. How you build it into your life, I'll leave that up to you. I'm not going to give any kind of prescription for that. But make it happen. Make it a cycle. God operates in cycles, and he tells us it is best for you, my people, to operate in a cycle. Have work, then have some rest where you can enjoy it, and know that God is providing for you, okay? There's some, every week we've been doing resources on the website for each of these weeks, and there's some really good ones for the mental health stuff. One of the things I was going to talk about was technology and how that plays into our mental health, and it's a big topic. Go check out Andy Crouch. He has some really cool things to say about it. But a lot of the resources that are on the website for this week are a lot about that and how you can use technology responsibly so that we are not diverted, entertained away from good, restful time, meaningful time with the people that we love. Technology can help that or can divert us from it. There's some great resources on there. I saw that there was the feelings wheel is one of the resources this week. I love the feelings wheel. It's so good. I use it all the time with my clients. I've taped a copy of it on our fridge so that my 2 young boys, we're teaching them to talk about their feelings. Download the feelings wheel. It's so good. It's just a way to give you vocabulary, language to share your feelings that I was talking about at the beginning that I was not going to talk about today, but it's a really cool resource. Go check out those resources. But really, I want to encourage you, church, build into the rhythm of your life, into the cycle of your life, a time to not worry, to not be anxious, to not be pressured into having to provide. Take a break with your family, with your friends, do something fun. Enjoy the work that you have done the last 6 days or however that cycle works out for you. And remember that God provides sufficiency for us. Even now here in the wilderness, where we are so worried that it's not enough, that we're not enough, God provides. Amen.
Would you all stand and let's sing one more song before we all take off today.
All my words fall short. I've got nothing new, and I express all my gratitude. I could sing these songs as I often do, but every song must end, and you never do. So I throw up my hands, praise you again and again, 'cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but I've nothing else fit for a king except for a heart singing hallelujah, hallelujah.
I've got one response. I've got just one move. With my arms stretched wide, I will worship you.
So I throw up my hands, praise you again and again, 'cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but I've nothing else fit for a king except for a heart singing hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, come on, my soul, don't you get shy on me. Lift up your song, 'cause you've got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. Yeah. Come on, my soul, oh, don't you get shy on me. Lift up your song, 'cause you've got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. Come on, my soul, oh, don't you get shy on me. Lift up your song, 'cause you've got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. praise you again and again, 'cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but nothing else fit for a king except for a heart singing hallelujah,
Amen. Thank you, band. Thank you, Ron. Those are some great words. All right, like Ron mentioned, there's some great resources online for you to check out. We've also got some great resources in the lobby that families you can take with you. There's a QR code at the bottom you can scan, and there's just tons and tons of different resources for families with children to talk about mental health and to learn more. We've also got a parenting workshop coming up in September, Parenting with Mental Health in Mind. So that'll be a great thing coming up, so stay tuned for that. Again, make sure you RSVP online for all the things I talked about earlier, and I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.